So Bernie Sanders was given a smear question during his town hall. Actually, he was given a couple smear questions. So I want to watch this here, and then when we come back, I'm going to give you an amazing fact, which really explains exactly how and why this is a smear question. Because you might listen to it and go, I don't really think that's a smear question. But when you hear the backstory, you're going to go, oh, okay, yeah, this appears to be on purpose. So take a look and then we'll discuss.
As we saw in the 2018 midterms, the Democratic Party has become more female, more racially diverse, and younger in age. How can a voter like me feel confident in your ability to represent the party, especially given that your response to sexual harassment allegations during your campaign is that you were, quote, a little bit busy running around the country trying to make the case to be elected as president?
Well, I think that quote was a little bit out of context. But let me ask you a question. I am enormously proud of the fact that we have the most diverse, progressive freshman class in the history of the United States Congress. And you know what I did in 2016 and in 2018? I ran all over this country to try to make that happen. All right. So when you talk about the political revolution, you're talking about two things. Number one are the ideas that we are fighting for. An economy that works for all, not just the 1%. But the second point that I have made over and over again is we're not going to be able to implement a progressive agenda unless millions more people get involved in the political process. So I am delighted. We started an organization called Our Revolution. I think Nina Turner is here. You know what the purpose of Our Revolution was about? Is precisely to bring young people into the political process. And I think we're making some real progress.
But what are you going to do, Senator, to make sure that the allegations that occurred against your campaign a couple of years ago are not repeated? What are you personally going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Let me tell you what we have done and what we are doing. I was very upset to learn what I learned. When I ran for re-election in Vermont in 2018, we instituted, I think, maybe the strongest protocols against sexual harassment, and that will be the protocols we bring into the 2020 presidential election. Every employee of mine in this campaign will get significant amounts of training to understand what sexual harassment is about. Anybody who feels harassed will have an independent entity to speak to outside of the campaign. And we have hired some of the best people in the country to help us on this issue. We take this issue very, very seriously.
How has it affected you personally, knowing what happened?
It was very painful, and it will not happen again.
All right, so first of all, I mean, the point that needs to just be upfront here and out of the way. New York Times wrote an article saying, oh my God, sexual harassment of Bernie Sanders' campaign, sexual harassment of Bernie Sanders' campaign, yada, yada. If you read just the headline, you would think Bernie Sanders himself did the sexual harassment. If you read the first 3 or 4 paragraphs, you'd think, oh my God, this was an epidemic, and they were callous, they didn't care. It was only deep in the article that they mentioned, oh, by the way, there's zero evidence Bernie Sanders was even told about this at all and knew it was happening. So, in other words, you have this giant campaign where all these things are going on. You are running around the country giving speeches, trying to raise awareness for Medicare for all and living wage and free college and ending the wars and getting elected. And then, so you don't know what's happening, and then you're told at the end of it, oh, by the way, there was sexual harassment happening, and we're gonna say you're responsible for it. So, you know, listen, he's a better guy than I am, because my response would have actually been very angry. I would have been like, well, I wasn't told and I didn't know, so how am I supposed to stop it or do anything about it? Like, think about it, guys. Even in theory, there's nothing he could have done because he wasn't even told that it was happening. So what do you want me to do? Apologize when there's literally nothing I could have ever done? And I'm literally not responsible for it because I didn't know and I wasn't told. So what am I supposed to have, fucking ESP and figure out what's happening and then fight back against it? And that's how you know it's a smear. He literally has zero responsibility for this. But they're presenting it as if he does have responsibility for it. It's a problem, and probably most perniciously, it's a problem specifically for his campaign. So listen, there was an article, I think it was written by journalist Owen Higgins, and it was a while back, and it was like during the 2016 campaign. And in that article, it was about sexual harassment in various campaigns, and they discussed, I think, Hillary Clinton campaign, Bernie Sanders campaign, and others. And that article, to my knowledge, was not like uniquely blaming Bernie or even trying to bury the fact that they didn't know about it, and it was very upfront saying, hey, sexual harassment on campaigns is a problem. Maybe there should be some broad protocols. But the article, fast forward, and the article in the New York Times, when it came out, hey, Bernie Sanders is probably going to run for president again, the article didn't mention any of the other campaigns and how there was sexual harassment in those campaigns too, tried to make it seem like it was a unique problem to Bernie, and tried to bury the fact that he didn't even know about it. So this is a smear effort. Now, again, Bernie's a better man than I am because basically he treats this as if it's like, oh no, it's not like the people who wrote that went into it trying to take down Bernie. They went into that just being objective observers and said, oh, there's this giant problem and let's address it and let's write about it. Well, that's either naive or he's playing the game to try to beat them at their own game because that's why he's, listen, I'm happy he set up those protocols, but I just would hope that when he set up those protocols, he's crystal clear. Like, just so everybody knows, I had no idea this was happening. I wasn't told it was happening, so there was nothing I could have done about it. But yes, I implemented these protocols now because these are super important and this won't happen again or whatever. But he doesn't lead with, I did nothing wrong. He kind of leads with, yes, serious problem. Let me validate your smear. And now I'm going to go on to say, this is what we're doing, X, Y, and Z. So, but again, that's how you know it's a smear question, because the people who are presenting it, they know that this wasn't unique to Bernie Sanders' campaign, and they know that he didn't know about it. So why would you bring it up? They bring it up because they want to use it to try to tank him. And guys, listen, don't be naive about this. Don't be like, because I can already see it now. People saying, oh my God, Kyle's so callous to concerns like this and yada yada. I'm calling out the double standard. I'm calling out the irrationality. I'm calling out how this is being weaponized, because that's what it is. It's being weaponized. Okay, so that's the first point. Now, the second point is this. Look at the beginning of that question. And if you didn't catch it well enough, go back and listen again, because it's really telling. Look at the assumption embedded in the point. The point was, hey, the Democratic Party is more female and more racially diverse, so basically, why should we trust you? So the assumption is, the implication is, well, obviously, women and people of color, obviously, they're only going to vote based on tribalistic characteristics, so why should they trust you, an old white man? That assumption is kind of bigoted. Like what? Black people and people of color can't say, hey, that guy represents the policies I want more? Of course they can. But she doesn't even, there's no wiggle room for that interpretation. It's just, oh, this party's more female and more racially diverse. So, therefore, obviously not you, right? That's insane. So, in other words, you're saying, I literally want people to put identity above policy. And just go, oh, simply because of your demographics, you're ruled out, even though Bernie's policies objectively are the best out of all the candidates for those communities mentioned. So, but listen, and Bernie really, I don't know if he pointed this out, he may have. The reaction that makes the most sense is, but hold on, when you look at the polls, guess who women and people of color prefer more than any other candidate? Guess who has the highest favorability numbers among those communities compared to every other candidate? He does. Bernie does. So it's a weird thing to say oh, since the party's more female and racially diverse, why would they go with you? Well, because the polls show women and people of color prefer him. So you're saying let's erase what women and people of color want, because let's think about what women and people of color would want. But they're telling you they want Bernie. So what do you mean? It's just it's so condescending. And that's one of the things about modern day identity politics, which is weaponized for cynical purposes, that it just drives me crazy. Is that so disingenuous and so condescending, this idea that well, obviously if you're a woman or a person of color, not Bernie, right? And then also the idea of they're harping away, okay, but what about the minorities? What about the minorities? What about the minorities? If you want to play that game, let's flip it back on you. Bernie Sanders is Jewish. So are you anti-Semitic because you're not giving him a fair shot? You're ruling him out? I mean, I don't want to play that game either, by the way. I'm just saying that that's a point that could be made if we were going to play that same cynical game. But then here's the final point and the most important point. That was not an organic question. That woman, and by the way, many other people who asked these questions during the town hall, they were Democratic Party operatives. They were plants. I'm not kidding. People did some research when they, like, certain questions were like, nobody would ask that question. What are you doing? And then people did some research, and they found out, oh, shit, these are literally Democratic Party operatives who were sent in there, and they were given titles like, you know, a former biology professor and shit, and they didn't disclose the ties to the Democratic Party. And then after the fact, this blew up on Twitter and blew up online, and CNN was forced to apologize for not saying, hey, this is really what this person does. So, guys, they're at it again, man. They're at it again. And if you think for a split second that they evolved in their tactics, they didn't evolve in their tactics at all. If anything, their tactics got worse and more desperate because they know he's the front runner. Look at Chris Cillizza and his bullshit, you know, recent segments. Why Bernie's not going to make it in 2020? And he doesn't even make a point. He just uses the stale talking points that everybody was using all along, and the video's got a fucking 95% dislike rate. They're never going to learn. But thankfully now, we're here to call them out, and you know where to go to see them get called out. But, I mean, this is... A lot of what they did here was disgusting, and it was effectively lying to the audience. But you know what? Even given all that, with the deck stacked against Bernie, I think my original prediction is going to come true. He's going to trump the Democratic primary, which means the Republican establishment did not want Trump. First they said Jeb Bush. Then they said, okay, we'll move on to Marco Rubio. Then they said, all right, fine, even Ted Cruz will take over Trump. And then eventually they just didn't have a choice because Trump destroyed everybody in the primary. That's what's going to happen with the Democratic primary, guys. We're going to see the same thing unfold. They're going to go, oh my God, whatever. Let's go for Kamala Harris. Oh shit, Kamala flakes out, doesn't make it. All right, well, about Beto O'Rourke. Yeah, let's go with Bet on My Stork. He's a good one. Oh fuck, he flamed out too. He's not going to make it. And they'll go down the line, man. And eventually they'll be like, oh shit, there's nobody left, and Bernie won. And we're also at the point where the arguments against Bernie are just ringing so hollow and only helping him. Like Politico did a hit piece recently where they had former Hillary Clinton operatives telling Politico, Bernie's a hypocrite on climate change because he took some private flights. But hold on, he took those private flights to campaign for Hillary Clinton to try to get her elected because he knew she was a weak candidate and he didn't want to see Donald Trump become president. So he took private flights to help you, and instead of being thankful that the most popular politician in the country tried to help you when she's massively unpopular, instead of doing that, they use it against him, and they say, Bernie Sanders took private flights. Hypocrisy much on climate change? No, not hypocrisy on climate change. That's a top-down policy that needs to be implemented in order to make a change. It's 100 corporations that are responsible for over 70% of the carbon emissions. So what do you mean? No, there's no individual fixes to climate change. That's not hypocrisy. You didn't get them. In the same way, if you drive a car, you're not a hypocrite on climate change. Are you fucking kidding me? But that's what they came up with. And then they're quoting him, all of them are quoting him and trying to shiv him in the article. They're all talking about Bernie and, I can't believe he would do such a thing. But that article was released, and the response was universally mocking that article. So in other words, they're trying to shiv Bernie, they're trying to destroy him, but all their arguments are so shitty, they only help Bernie, because then you get to a point where everybody goes, oh, well, they're trying to fucking destroy this guy, and he's only fighting for policies that'll help us. Now we're going to rally to his defense. So keep going, guys, keep going. Because the more you do this, the more it gets exposed, the more people rally around Bernie, the more likely it is he's going to win. So they're going to shoot themselves in the foot, by all means. I'm reminded of all those ads that other Republicans ran against Trump, where they were like, here's a compilation of him cursing. How crass. And people's response was, okay, I think I like him more now. He's more relatable because he's using curse words and doesn't give a shit. So go ahead, keep trying, but you're going to keep shooting yourself in the foot because you guys don't know anything about politics. You don't know what you're doing. You don't realize you're a house of cards and nobody likes you, and people love this guy because he actually wants to fight for policies that'll help everybody, everyday people. So anyway, there's the smear question. It was probably the worst question of the night. The whole point was to smear him and shiv him and take him down. But thankfully, I think he still did a wonderful job in the town hall.